Good afternoon and welcome to the February 12th, 2024 meeting of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission. This is our full commission work session. My name is Douglas A. Welton and I am the chairman of the Planning Commission. Planning Commission work session is being held here at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center, 600 East 4th Street. We are in room 280 today. If you're wandering around the halls looking for us in our usual location, we moved down the hall. We're just hiding from you. For those of you who are viewing by the public and the media, today's meeting is being streamed on the Planning Design and Development Department's YouTube page, and that meeting will also be cached there so that you can watch it over and over again to your heart's desire. We will begin our meeting today by, do we have more stuff that I have to say? No, we don't, but we'll begin by doing introductions, and we will begin all the way to my left with the commissioners, and we will begin with Commissioner Stewart.
Robin Stewart, Planning Commission.
RJ Harvey, Planning Commission.
Erin Shaw, Planning Commission.
Rebecca Wilden, Planning Commission.
Clayton Seeley, Planning Commission.
Melissa Gassman, Planning Commission.
Will Russell, Planning Commission.
Shauna Neely, Planning Commission.
Jenny and Quila, Happy New Year. Terry Lansdale, Planning Commission.
Courtney Rhodes, Planning Commission.
Thank you very much. We will also introduce the staff in the room, and we'll begin with Ms. Knight.
Al Knight, staff.
Yolanda Jones, Planning Staff.
Allison Craig, Planning Director.
Monica Holmes, Deputy Director.
The feedback is an extra guest that we did not plan on having today, but we're excited about it, and we're going to do the best that we can with that. Do we have anybody else online that's staff or anything? Everybody's here in the room? Glad to have you at the February meeting. We'll begin this meeting by the usual, getting our minutes approved for the January work session minutes. And do I have a motion for the disposition of our January minutes, which came to you all in the packet on Thursday?
Motion to approve.
Second, Wilden.
I'm going to give that one to Wilden. It's been moved by Harvey and seconded by Wilden. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the minutes have been approved. And I will say that I want the whole commission to know that when I read the minutes, they were very thorough this time. And I was very, very pleased that we had such excellent minutes that captured everything in the meeting. And we will go from there. On our agenda today, we've got a couple of different topics that are going to go on. We're going to get an update from the Nest Commission. That's going to be the first thing we do. Then we're going to get an update on City Council's referral of upcoming UDO work. We're going to get that. And we have special guests to give us some homework, but she's not here right now, but we'll work on, she may be wandering around the building somewhere, I don't know. But we will begin by doing our Nest session. And we're going to have Rebecca Hefner and Justin. You're on the screen right now, so I guess you're going to get us started with this, or the two of you are going to give us a presentation about Nest.
Yeah, we're going to tag team a bit. I think the screen share is coming from Rebecca, and then we'll both be kind of speaking and guiding us through the deck here. So thank you all for having us today. I'm Justin Harlow. I am one of the co-chairs for the Neighborhood Equity and Stabilization Commission, one of the commissions that were created out of the adoption of the UDO. Kim Graham, my co-chair, is not with us today, so I'll be taking that away. Leading us today without her, but Rebecca Hefner, as many know, is our staff liaison, and I guess I'll let her introduce herself, but always good to tag team our Nest work with her.
Thanks, Justin. Good afternoon, everyone. Rebecca Hefner, Director of Housing and Neighborhood Services. glad to be joining you today to share a little bit of the great work that Justin and the Nest Commission have been doing in the last 2+ years.
All right, slide deck up here. Yep, so there we go. Good. So yeah, listen, the Nest, as I mentioned, the Nest Commission was created from the adoption of the UDO, created in kind of in tandem with the Charlotte Equitable Development Commission. Our main kind of charge was really to, over a 3-year appointment period, was to just kind of review and study and make recommendations specific to anti-displacement. Really, you've heard the council and other staff talk about, tools in the toolbox, right? How could we enhance, make more efficient the existing tools that already exist at the city disposal? And also, are there new things? Our group is made up of 15 members, appointed from various different backgrounds. We've got kind of folks who work in the private mortgage space, folks who are in the real estate industry space, other just community leaders, neighborhood leaders, nonprofit leaders and developers. And so a number of a wide-ranging interest of just good volunteer citizens who have offered themselves up on this commission for some of this arduous work that we're doing. So you'll see those are the 15 members there on the slide. And sorry, I feel like I'm getting a delay when you're turning it, but maybe I'm not because I'm not controlling the screen. But those are 15 members there. We talked about the charge. And so how do we start with this work? We have kind of dove into this by kind of breaking out the interests of our members first into these 3 subcommittee work stream groups, one of which is, so I guess maybe some interest in what y'all are going to be discussing a little bit later, understanding the impacts of the UDO, and then a lay of the land work structure group that's really looking at home ownership, trying to find, some space to where we can maybe make some recommendations around these institutional corporate investor things going on in the city, land acquisition, and then the policy and program improvements group, which is a substream that I kind of lead that looks at rent assistance, tax relief. What we're working on now, and our final kind of thing is looking at how to tackle kind of some permanent funding for anti-displacement. As the city continues to grow, of course, no news to you all in the room. Our city grows, and so therefore there's development pressure against some underfunded and disinvested neighborhoods sometimes that affect a large portion of the city and surrounding populations. That leads to a lot of displacement. So our job is really to try to help stop some of that bleeding, understanding that all of this is a freight train, and but figure out ways that the city could continue to participate, whether it be through the Housing Trust Fund, looking at other transit-oriented development things, and then also just with these new policies around the UDO and the Comprehensive 2040 Plan to help the city continue to not stop growth, but have smart growth and have as many constituents and neighbors participating in that growth. All right, so we started this work in 2022. For some reason, it feels way longer than that. We started this work in 22 and a 3-year appointment that really kind of ends. I guess we were appointed in late 21. We first met in 22, and our official 3-year appointment will end in the end of this year at the end of 2024. We first kind of developed a work plan. That's what you just saw on the previous slide. The work plan was developed in the early years. We had to get everybody kind of on the same page. Everyone's coming in with different, kind of different understandings of what's going on, different experiences, even representing different interest groups. And so it was really just aligning the information first, and then we really kind of got to work through all of 22 and 23. We developed an anti-displacement strategy that was finalized mid-year last year with the help of HRNA, which is a consultancy group. I forget where they're based out of, but nonetheless, a consultant group that helped us kind of craft that. We've been meeting, I want to say maybe quarterly, with the Housing, Safety, and Community Committee, chaired by Councilwoman Wallington, providing these updates, and also have had a few a few recommendations that have actually moved through the council committee and full council process. First of which there was the tax relief support that the Nest Commission recommended as part of an initial slate of recommendations to support some tax relief for FY24 to help get some tax help for city residents that were about to feel some of the impact of the original 2023 county revaluation. We also have done some kind of city to city stuff with the city of Austin. They seem to be a little bit on the forefront of some of this anti-displacement work. Not a lot of best practices really to follow because a lot of cities just haven't kind of taken this on really. So I guess you could say that we're leading the way too, and learning a lot as we go. Our anti-displacement funding recommendation just kind of happened. We kind of got through that in January, right before the city council strategy session, their retreat, and asked for and recommended that they increase the housing trust fund to $100 million, and from that look at $25 million set aside specifically for anti-displacement initiatives. Rebecca, feel free to join in and jump in.
Yeah, so Justin, I'll go quickly through the anti-displacement strategy slides and then hand it back to you for just overview of the Nest recommendations. So just a couple slides here to share with y'all. The Nest Commission and HRNA advisors did work together last year to develop an anti-displacement strategy, of course, with stakeholder and community input. And the way I describe this is they helped us come in and take all the tools out of the garage and organize them and put them back together in a way that we can really leverage them together in an impactful way. So the anti-displacement strategy really builds on all of the tools and resources and plans that we already have as a city. The Housing Charlotte framework, the recommendations from the 2040 comp plan, the Silverline TOD study, and of course what Nest Commission has been doing. The purpose of having the strategy is really just to allow us to be more responsive and nimble as the market and conditions in our city change, and it allows us to scale up from a variety of pilot programs that we've been conducting around how we provide services to help residents stay in place, whether that's ADUs or our acquisition rehab resale program, or other ways of identifying resident needs. We had a pilot program that we want to be able to scale, so the strategy really helps us design that. And then the other important thing about the strategy is that it helps us really think about what are the various household needs and what are the various neighborhood needs. And Justin referenced the toolbox. So we need to be able to use the right tools in the right place at the right time. So the strategy helps guide us in that. The strategy currently has 4 goals, 3 of which we've designed so far through the process with Nest Commission: supporting residents, strengthening communities, and fostering inclusivity. All of this will sound very familiar as it is based upon the comprehensive plan and just dives down a little bit deeper into these areas. We're putting together a way of tracking our success and our metrics, really based on how we're able to increase services for residents and create resident stability, provide resources for communities, and then really increase trust and participation around the engagement and governance components. As part of advancing the strategy, there are a variety of activities that are already in progress, and this slide just covers some of those that Justin also referenced, some of the funding that has already been provided, and then a lot of the work under strengthening communities is work that we do in partnership with the planning department and others across the organization. Things like doing anti-displacement planning within specific neighborhoods, working on a community toolkit of resources, supporting the planning department in their advancement of the neighborhood overlay district pilot, and how we talk about anti-displacement as part of the community area planning workshops. So the work around strengthening communities is really work of that is a partnership with planning. And then on the fostering inclusivity side, some of the pieces that we're working on already around that are creating an online resource hub for residents, and then ensuring that all of our materials and our outreach efforts are in multiple languages, and then targeted to the right places so that people can access them. So I'll hand it back to you, Justin, to talk a little bit about the recommendations so far from the Nest Commission.
Yes, thank you. So, part of the strategy was building out these objectives and goals. And so, supporting residents, strengthening community, fostering inclusivity. How can we make recommendations with those kind of basic tenets in mind? And beyond the tax relief recommendations, there were 9 other kind of programmatic investments that we were recommending for to the city council at various intervals. But as you can see, these, as we line them up, and you'll see eventually in a minute here on the next slide, each of the recommendations fit under one of these goals, most of which fit the first 6 or so, 7 fit under the supporting residents goal, and then strengthening communities has more to do with shared ownership model, and then the sustaining kind of permanent funding source as a fostering inclusivity and an ongoing engagement. So these 9, or really these 8, and that bottom right side, the 9th is kind of the newest, but these 8 were originally recommended, those recommendations were approved in November. Most of which the funding coming from some of the remaining ARPA funds, but a big focus on not just rental, but also home ownership and smaller landlord investments. We'll start here with the acquisition, rehab, and resale. So this is an existing program that we were kind of revitalizing a bit through the recommendation. This is a program where that started in 2021 through the council, where funding is able to be acquired. You can acquire a unit, you complete the rehab, the city helps you complete that rehab, and then in return, there's a subsidized cost to the buyer, and then also kind of a deed restriction on top of that. That helps create an affordable stock of low and moderate income household, that kind of missing middle we talk about a lot. And so we've seen this program be very successful. It initially started as kind of a pilot program, and we think that it's worth the city kind of moving it into a larger kind of citywide program. And as you see at the bottom bullet point there, 20 units purchased, average subsidy at that time about $30,000. And our recommendation was 15 more units for a total of $1 million, which put that at about $67,000 each. The program started, construction costs and renovation costs were very different. That kind of middle of COVID price escalation hit, and what we found with a lot of these existing programs that the city has, and you'll see that as we keep going through, is that just the amount of investment, it really needed to be picked up a little bit because of various inflationary factors and things of that nature. House Charlotte is one of them. Again, a very successful program for down payment assistance. This is arguably the most successful home ownership assistance program that we have, trying to help low and moderate income families get into an appreciating asset of a home. So the House Charlotte Plus pilot is looking at an increased investment in down payment assistance, so up to $80,000, but specifically in these corridors of opportunity. We've heard that term, 1,000 times over, but generally in the Crescent, in and around Northwest and parts of East Charlotte, where this funding can help provide a deferred and eventually forgivable loan for buyers at an 80% or below AMI level. And so our recommendation was 12 units for a total of $1 million, which comes out to that $80,000. And if I'm not mistaken, those funds are already exhausted. If Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, these are
The initial pilot program funding is exhausted. It was how Charlotte is typically $30,000 in down payment assistance, and with interest rates as high as they are right now, it's very difficult to utilize that. The $80,000 down payment assistance option was fully committed in 3 months. So we will open another round of House Charlotte Plus with those Nest recommended funds sometime within the next month.
We imagine, we're not economists, but we imagine, as interest rates continue to go down, there'll be more people wishing to participate. Natural demand to get into the home ownership space. So we want the city to be able to be ready for that. Accessory dwelling units. So this is, a topic that has come up a lot before the UDO adoption, but certainly since, and what that looks like on various parcels and increasing density and all those density conversations that are being had. An ADU pilot this is where we recommended 10 ADUs, 10 to 15 for $1 million investment. Comes out to about $70,000. It's really where you can have multiple models here, right? You can have a traditional kind of owner-occupied house. They've got some space behind the house for some type of ADU, garage apartment, or something of that nature, and they want to help. That homeowner wants to help support the city's goals of, providing some type of affordable accessory unit. And there's a way to do it, but they maybe, can't fund that 100% for themselves. Or want some type of city help for it, city subsidy for it. So that the homeowner model really is where this fund would create 100% construction costs for the homeowner, and then the program recovers that cost, 50% of that cost over time, and that becomes tries to become a revolving fund for future owners. But I guess the catch, if you will, is that the city gets a 15-year affordability restriction on that unit. Which kind of guarantees that unit is at a certain AMI level. We want to see how the program works first, and everything we've been doing has kind of been at this 80% AMI level or below, trying to be very specific about who can benefit from this. But if need be, the council, we've been very clear, like, hey, we don't want to lock you in so much. We want a program to be successful, but if it needs for higher AMI participation, maybe looking at up to 110, 120. What we learned too is that there's a lot of, we know there's a lot of investor-owned properties around the city. And so we wanted to create kind of an investor-owned model as well. Not where we were getting, 100% of the construction costs, but, help have those investors have some skin in the game. And so a 40% construction cost for local investors or developers, but at that same 15-year affordability restriction. And then, simplicity is always the best way to try as best we can, legally, to streamline processes through permitting and things of that nature. Trying to be able to use the digital tools that already exist and digital applications and things that already exist to try to help, understanding that the time is money in this business. And so, but an opportunity for homeowners who have space or who already have some type of dwelling unit there, but maybe want to rehab it or fix it up and still be able to participate, while also supporting the city's goals to create more units for people at that income level. So small landlord investments. We've talked a lot about this on Nest Commission. Often those tools in the toolbox that the city has are for kind of large scale big developers building hundreds and hundreds of units. And so there's, natural programs that those developers and investors are already participating in. But we had a lot of conversation around what about folks who, they've been maybe inherited a few properties or inherited one property and then, purchased one or two others or a few others. But they don't have as many units to, have to participate in housing trust fund funding and things of that nature. But want to help and participate in this affordable housing conversation that the city is having. So these investor-owned properties, what we're calling small landlord investments, allows for participation in city rehab programs, again, with that same 15-year affordability restriction and tag, to allow these smaller landlords who have a smaller number of doors to participate, and they can compete for city investment, no different than these larger developers participate. We do know sometimes there's a kind of a capacity gap. And so we wanted to also, as part of that funding recommendation, which I believe that number was 20 units for $1 million, so about 50 grand a unit per small landlord. But to be able to, have them participate in some training or education or capacity to help grow their businesses as well. And so if they were looking to scale, this was an opportunity where the city could help provide them some training and mentoring to be able to do that while also, taking advantage of some of these city programs. So often we hear, so those first five, let me start those first five, we just kind of went through our various previous pilots or current pilot initiatives through staying in place, and, kind of true direct unit, there's direct tangible amounts of units attached to those kind of those recommendations. These next couple are going to be more about, how do we build up information in neighborhoods, build up information for community organizations. And so when we talk about reducing barriers to programs and information, we've recommended $100,000 investment for 3 years into training staff, into training neighborhood leaders, into having paid neighborhood canvassers to help promote these programs and anti-displacement initiatives, and eventually even get to a place where we're just meeting people where they are, these resiliency hubs, these networks inside of communities. We talk so often about the walkable neighborhoods, the 10-minute neighborhoods, but all these resources are available to neighbors, and yet sometimes the biggest barrier is, I can't get uptown, or I can't navigate that process uptown. And Nest Commission said, well, how about we bring the network to you? And so we try to take away that one barrier of, I didn't know about it, or this was not told to me. But if it's right there in their communities, where shared information can be given, or it's kind of a one-stop shop, drop-in type of place in a community. We find that is, we have found that was information from neighbors in some of the communities we canvassed, that they say, hey, if you just came to us right here, it's much easier for those neighbors versus them having to listen to council meetings, hope they hear something, even having to directly connect with 311 even. And so we've recommended some investment there for that. Excuse me. Similarly, a referral resource services. So many groups are doing this work at various levels, and it's all really interconnected, right? We understand the intersectionality of it all. We're talking a lot about housing, but there's a transit side, there's an infrastructure side, there's a food disparity side, language barrier even, and so we really want investments to go even beyond just hey, let's just talk about housing. And how do you put all of these type of referral sources and resources not necessarily under one roof, but have that same type of shared information go out, because it's likely sometimes that someone who is in need of housing or looking or is feeling the pressures of displacement also has pressures elsewhere in their lives. And so we want to be able to try to tie that knot so we can get out of it. We've all used that term silos, right? And then try to have something centralized. And so the $80,000 a year investment is recommendation to the city council for that work. And then out of the last of the 8, the kind of a shared ownership pilot, we've heard the council members, people campaign, myself included as a former council member, talk about shared ownership models and what that looks like. And we've got, a few groups here in the city already that are doing some of that work on their own. Whether it be land trust or co-ops and things of that nature. Many of you've probably heard of the the West Side Community Land Trust, or the co-op that's attached to the West Boulevard Coalition and things of that nature. So, and then nonprofit groups or even faith-based groups, there are churches that are doing some of these things as well. And we believe that should be explored more. We know that it is creative. It's something that a lot of cities have, again, talked about, and municipalities have talked about, but haven't necessarily invested in. And so a small investment in the grand scheme, $250,000 in what we're calling just technical assistance to these community groups to provide them some funding to maybe promote themselves a little bit more, help with some capacity building, and continue to have the city learn more about how maybe these shared ownership models could work and be employed in our communities. So again, just another dart at the wall that seems to be sticking in a small scale, but maybe trying to help that grow a bit. So those 8 again were actually presented, I think presented multiple times throughout the fall, and then officially kind of adopted and accepted at the council meeting in November, and then full council in November or December as well. And then this anti-displacement funding is, meeting and trying to advance the third objective, which is really a dedicated funding source. We can have pilot programs, we can have successful programs that are being implemented, but unless there's ongoing investment, then there's just another group that needs to be created to recommend the same stuff over and over. And so we really want to find a sustainable funding source here. We kind of went after the ARPA funds for the tax relief, but those are kind of one-time things. Some of these recommendations are the same, or just coming out of other housing budget items. And so we've recommended to the council to have a true kind of operating budget for anti-displacement programming. We did this intentionally in January, recommending it before their strategy session, because we know the budget conversations are really about to kick into high gear here, early part of the spring, into the spring. And so we are evaluating kind of all potential local sources, bringing them all together, trying to see, okay, where can any other dollars come from? One place where dollars come from all the time is the bonds. We're pretty successful with getting bonds approved in this city. The city's pretty an open book about if that leads to a tax hike or not. The manager's been pretty good about that. And Nest has said, hey, we believe that there's community support in increasing the affordable housing bonds to continue to support the traditional models which is being used, which is Housing Trust Fund and NOAA's, NOAA subsidies. But this set aside for anti-displacement funding, we feel that if we can get that as part of the bond language, or at least part of the bond spend in the future, that for future bond packages, that will already be on the minds of the city staff and the manager, but also of the council members. We still got some other things to go that we're working on to finish out the rest of this year. Looking at some TOD fee in lieu payment stuff that's been happening, where developers are able to pay into a fund to get more height and more density in their developments in TOD zoning districts. And so we think that that's a space to continue that, as we've seen success already, and from the development community particularly. When the development community says this is something that works, then it makes us look and say, okay, well, this has worked. How can we get the most bang for our buck from it? They're helping grow the city and do it responsibly. So that will be one of the final things we do as we advance into the end of the year, going into the next year's budget, so FY25 budget cycle. But that's where we stand. So we'll continue to meet throughout the year. We meet every other month. on the second Wednesday at, in person, and then our work stream committees meet on the other off months on same thing, second Wednesdays. And thanks to the planning department, Rebecca's been great on the housing side. I know Allison's in the room and Monica's in the room. Alicia, I don't know if she was there or not, but Alicia Osborne, and just great work from the staff. We've gotten some phenomenal support from staff, and that we couldn't do it without you guys. And so, and Planning Commission, thank you for having us, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Rebecca. Have we got some questions? I see Commissioner Lansdale.
I have two questions, if you don't mind. First, going back to your $250,000 technical assistance set aside, and I'm not sure what slide that was, maybe around 17 or 18. But can you talk a little bit about how that might work? Oftentimes we see neighborhood groups needing technical assistance to put in a grant for technical assistance. The process is so complicated. So we'd love to be able to sort of see at that line item how that $250,000 set aside might work. And then I have a quick follow-up.
Great question. So we are still working through what that's going to look like. As always happens with good questions, I will say back to you, we would welcome thoughts and ideas on how best to deploy that initial round of technical assistance. Our thinking was initially around how can we bring residents together to think through what some of these models might look like. And we have a round, a potential city-owned land RFP that could be coming out later this year. And we think that's an interesting opportunity to partner with developers and residents at the same time to see if we can bring in some of those other kind of models to the standard development process. When we have a stake in it, with the city's land, we have an opportunity to be collaborative and design some of those different kinds of strategies.
And thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, I still don't really get how we're going to be able to disperse that $250,000. Yeah, I think of the neighborhood grants process and how difficult that is for neighborhoods to apply and then execute those. So I'm very interested in a follow-up on that or further discussion down the line. On slide 23 is my second question. It is always a concern for me because the fee in lieu question that your goal is to provide by 2025 for the UDO recommendations. My personal and professional goal is that a fee in lieu would actually represent the actual costs of a sidewalk, not 10% or 2% of the cost of the sidewalk. We'd like to see fee in lieus represent the actual cost, the infrastructure they are actually required to provide. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lansdale. I've got Commissioner Weldon.
Hi, so I was curious, what other funding mechanisms, dedicated funding mechanisms did y'all explore? Because I know in other cities, I've heard of cities doing an estate transfer tax with a carve out for people that are only that are not primary, where this isn't their primary residence. And, with displacement, a lot of times that also comes from people that own multiple homes that are taking away housing stock from people. So is that something that y'all explored?
Great question. We did not explore the estate, like an estate tax specifically. We did look at property and sales tax though. And we had Jordan from I forget Jordan's last name, Rebecca, I'm sorry. But from the budget office, kind of run numbers to say, give us some hypothetical scenarios here, right? What does, what does a half cent look like on property and sales tax? Now, of course, property tax is something that can be done right here locally, no permission needed from General Assembly. Sales taxes, the larger burden, needing General Assembly help. And also there's all these other sales tax conversations around transit and things of that nature. But we did explore that to just have the Nest Commission really understand, what does a penny get you? right? If the council so chose to do that, or if we so chose to recommend that. And then it came out to about 20-something million for a penny on property and hundreds of millions for a penny on sales tax. We then, as we looked at the bond language, which often doesn't, sometimes doesn't come with tax increases. We can't speak for that year over year, and certainly don't want to put words in the city manager's mouth. But we know that traditionally the city bond has not really come with a tax increase. And so we said, well, here's maybe an opportunity where the community isn't taxed for its own kind of, anti-displacement initiatives. It's also an opportunity where there's already been plenty of success because bonds passed. And so that's where and we know it's coming up. It's approaching already. It doesn't mean that, hey, this is where it has to permanently come from forever, but we know that, bond language has to kind of get set by the summertime and before ballots go out. So that was really where we explored that. We had a whole conversation with some Austin City staff and their plan. I think they use a tax for essentially a anti-displacement tax to help fund what they're doing. They've kind of got this 10-year plan to raise a few $100 million. I think 300 million, I think, was their goal. And so the state tax thing is something, no one's brought us up. But this is why we like this. And we're still exploring that fully because we just met about that. And even to the fee and lieu point to the previous commissioner, we only just started talking about that literally a week ago. So that is brand new for us. So these are things that we will then charge staff with saying, hey, dig into this a little bit more. We like these ideas, and we invite these outside ideas so we can study it a bit more and then, make proper recommendations appropriately.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Justin and Rebecca. This whole thing has been super informative too, at least speaking for myself, someone that I had heard of Nest, of course, because of Commissioner Gaston, but had not dug into all of the things you all have accomplished in the last 4 or 5 years. With regard to new construction, and it's possible that I missed it, but specifically with regard to sort of multifamily units you can hear me? Okay, sorry. We broke up on our end. I'm just curious if any of the programs apply to those new construction multifamily developments. And if so, have you all found an avenue to work with those developers that kind of works for their investment model and also for, providing the housing? I know that's just been not just here in Charlotte, but nationally is a really tough, the numbers I know are tough to make work on both sides. So I'm just curious if that's been something that fits into your initiatives at all, or if that's sort of outside of the purview of what y'all are focused on.
Justin, I can help with that one if you want me to start. So the Nest Commission has primarily focused on anti-displacement or staying in place, but we know that from a broader perspective, the overarching challenge is there's not enough housing overall, then there's not enough affordable housing, and then there are not enough resources for staying in place. So while Nest Commission was charged with looking at the anti-displacement tools and resources, we've kept that centered in the overall conversation about the production of affordable housing and even the production of housing in general. And so while Nest hasn't specifically looked at it, the city has been working on, last year we did a housing trust fund tune-up, for example, taking a look at what are some of the ways that we can change the model of the housing trust fund to incentivize an increased production and also longer affordability periods, for example. So the programs themselves don't necessarily apply to those large multifamily new construction projects, just by nature of the way that Nest has defined anti-displacement, but we're looking at it as part of that same ecosystem of we need more affordable housing and we need more housing in general.
That makes sense, and sounds like y'all have been really impactful going about it that way. So no further questions. Thanks.
Anyone else got any questions?
Just one quick question.
Commissioner Russell?
Just for clarification, on one slide, there was a mention of a 15-year affordability restriction, and it seemed like that applied to smaller scale developers. Am I correct in that, or am I misreading that?
Yeah, you're correct. It's, for whether it be the acquisition, rehab and resale, or what we were calling specifically small landlord investments. So folks who have, a few doors, that maybe don't qualify for some of these, larger trust fund, type of, subsidies, or even, single landlords or homeowners who want to, build or rehab accessory dwelling units. That is kind of the trade-off, is really how do we, how does the city, come in, provide the upfront capital for the rehab or for the construction of the unit, or whatever it may be? How does the city get something back in return? Beyond just, hey, you just house this person for a year. What we don't want is to say, hey, we're going to give you $50,000, rehab this thing. You provide this unit for someone at a certain income level for 1 year. You didn't really get any return back from that to support our affordable housing goals.
And the affordability period varies by program. We have programs that have 15, like our rehab programs have a 15-year affordability period. Most of our larger NOAA acquisitions are 20. Our housing trust fund investments are typically 40. Some of them are actually 99. So it varies by program. And the city has also implemented not just the affordability periods within deed restrictions, but a variety of other tools that help protect the stock of affordable housing. For example, incorporating the right of first refusal into the agreements as well. So for example, our home ownership program has a 30-year affordability period, and at any time, if that comes up for sale, the city is able to have that right of first refusal to see if we want to make a purchase to recycle those units back into affordability. So it takes a kind of a collection of tools to maintain affordability over time, but we also need to balance that, particularly in our home ownership programs and even in the home ownership model for ADUs, with how are we enabling households to generate wealth and provide for economic mobility. So that's the balancing act with any particular set of restrictions.
Yeah, I would just like to mention that you would probably want to start engaging more small scale developers as you start fleshing this program out, because what I'm hearing on its face is two conflicting viewpoints that are going to fight each other, and you're not going to get the desired outcome of getting a unit for the price you need. A smaller scale developer is going to be able to build quicker and for less dollar amount. But if you're going to restrict him on the back end for affordability, you're essentially making it so it doesn't pencil, so you don't get the product anyway. So I would recommend just looking at some of the small scale developers that work in the city and really talking to them and getting into the nuts and bolts of understanding how their development math works, because I think that's going to help you develop a program that's going to be tailored to somebody of that size.
Thank you, Commissioner Russell. Anybody else got anything? Commissioner Gaston.
Good afternoon, Justin and Rebecca. Great presentation. I really have more of just a comment. I have, of course, been on the Nest Commission with you all and appreciate that opportunity. It's been enlightening, but I also wanted to just share an experience for the affordable housing piece and the House Charlotte, the $80,000. Currently, the House Charlotte Plus hasn't been released yet. We're hoping within the next week, not the next month, Rebecca, but us okay. But so as an example, I have units that are for sale currently through DreamKey that are $265 and currently matching their down payment with House Charlotte, CPLP, which is a state program in North Carolina. They can have up to $95,000. And it's amazing the amount of interest I've had, but just to see the people who are teachers or they work for CMS or they're, work in a nonprofit space or whatever type of space, and they're able to get into a house. And so I've had, 8 residents so far who are able to get in and they're spending $1,500 out of their pocket and getting them into a brand new 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 1,500 size townhouse. It's just amazing, and it's made a difference in the community. So we need to keep pushing for these type of programs. And then to be able to add another $50,000 onto that, that means you have $145,000 to potentially get you into a $265,000 place, which is just phenomenal, especially with interest rates what they currently are. So thank you for the work you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Gaston. Anybody else? Oops, Commissioner Shaw?
Sorry, I lied. I have one other question. And I apologize if this was answered and I did not catch it. It seems like there would be a lot of administrative work associated with implementing and managing these programs and funds. Is that something that Nest takes on? Is there a specific division of the city government that takes it on? How does that, especially kind of, because obviously, as you said, Rebecca, there's some that are 15-year limits and some 99, and there's some ROFRs and other sort of loopholes. And it sounds to me like a lot to manage ongoing from both a cost and a manpower standpoint.
Sure, and thank you for bringing that up. All staff across the city appreciate that perspective. So primarily, the program implementation falls to our housing services group within Housing and Neighborhood Services. So we have folks that work in asset management, for example. We have a small but mighty team in asset management, and then folks that work on our rehab programs. So some of these are additional parts of a rehab program or additional parts of a home ownership program. And then we also have a lot of partners in the community who support implementation. So for example, Dream Key Partners administers our House Charlotte program on behalf of the city. So yes, it takes quite a lot of people power to implement the programs. And then also, as Justin referenced, it takes a lot of people power to help to help people learn about the programs, help them navigate. And one of the commissioners was talking about, the grants can be difficult to navigate as well. So on a lot of that falls to staff, but a lot of it falls to our partners in the community and our partners on the ground in neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Anybody else? I have like 2 or 3, and hopefully they're simple, one-word almost answer questions. During your presentation, you guys, there was a slide where you had all these other organizations or bodies that were doing some similar things. And my reaction to that was, where's Mecklenburg County? And it seemed like there was a lot of overlap in terms of some of the programs that I believe, what I feel like Mecklenburg County offers. Do you guys work with Mecklenburg County at all? Is that a notion, or do we have silos? Just checking. That's my first question.
So the answer is yes, we work with Mecklenburg County, and yes, we have silos.
2 for 1.
So yes, so we work closely with Mecklenburg County, especially on overall on our housing strategy, and partnering with them primarily through A Home for All and the work that we're doing together as it relates to the whole spectrum of homelessness and affordable housing. So the slide was referencing a particular pilot program that the city ran last year, the Staying in Place pilot program, where we were working with Atrium Health. We had community health workers on the ground in neighborhoods. And that's actually also a partnership with Mecklenburg County, because Mecklenburg County also funds community health workers through Atrium for various components of work in the community. And then of course, quite a few of the services that that would be accessible through those resource and referral networks are county services. And so the strategy is not so much to provide those services. Mecklenburg County already does that. A lot of our nonprofit partners do that. The resource and referral piece is more about sharing the information, making it easier for people to access and navigate, and really getting that ground game in neighborhoods to help direct people to the resources that they need.
Okay, thank you. That answers. I have one more question and a vague essence of a comment. I agree with Commissioner Russell's notion of getting developers involved early, because when you guys were talking about rolling out information to neighborhoods and neighborhood leaders, et cetera, I just thought the development community needs to be in that formula as well. And I would just, as if you guys, if you needed me to tell you what to do, comma, but I would definitely think that some of those folks in the, particularly on the smaller side, might be a very valuable resource for you. And last question I have is, does the Nest Commission have a timeline? Do you guys sunset at a certain period of time or not? Because, well, we could get to a place and we would need no more housing and everything would be lovely. But I don't know if you guys have figured out what day that is yet.
We have a timeline. Yeah, this was a 3-year appointment. As I mentioned, we were all appointed. Well, most of the appointments happened at the end of 2021, December. And so, by the way that the charge was written and everything, we do sunset at the end of this year, 2024. Now, there's been a lot of conversation about what looks like afterwards. I think our consultants that helped us draft and make the strategy, the actual written strategy, even said, you might want to look at this being like a permanent city appointed group, which we chuckled at the time, but it's not, it wasn't a bad recommendation either. There will, the housing issues don't just go away in December. And so what does that look like going forward? Future recommendations will still need to be had. Our hope is that the strategy is what lives on, and that is a, part of the policy that whoever the city leaders are in the future look at, to say, hey, okay, how do we continue to try to meet these adopted goals and objectives, using because the strategy really is it's really one document that tries to bring together all the various frameworks and other policy documents around, particularly around affordable housing. But who knows where it's going? I will say this to your previous question. The county is considering a similar group. I only know this. Rebecca doesn't even know this yet, I don't think. We just got invited to the Intergovernmental County Commissioners meeting, trying to find a date that works on that front. Because Commissioner Mark Jarrell, who's chairing that committee, is now interested in saying, oh, I didn't even know this thing existed. So now this is something interesting because the county's in the housing space a little differently than maybe they've been in the past. And yes, they're doing tax relief through the homes program and some other things. And they're really, their big focus is always, the homelessness component of it, and the kind of 30% below AMI component of the community. But what does that look like? Is this the next iteration a kind of county appointed group where the county takes on it, takes a role in it as well? Who knows? But we're here to see and find out.
All right. Thank you very much. If we don't have any other questions, I'm looking around, not seeing any hands up, then Justin and Rebecca, we will give you our heartfelt thanks for giving us the good information about what Nest is up to. If you guys have any other brilliant ideas that you need to share, please feel free to reach out to us or invite us to one of your meetings sometime. Maybe I can find some time to get over and see you all as well. But thank you very much for the presentation today. And you all enjoyed the rainy, soggy rest of the day.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks for having us.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I guess we're up to our next part of the party today. Last Monday, what are the initials of that group that meets on Monday? It's transportation
planning
and development.
Yes, TPD.
TPD now.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a meeting. It's like first Monday at 10 o'clock. It's the most exciting meeting. And I was going to come down and see it. And I said, no, Douglas, you have stuff to do. That wasn't the exact words I said, but so I didn't even watch you guys online, but apparently something happened. And so at that meeting, as many of you know, there was, I guess this was last summer when the UDO became effective. There were some questions that were raised and the planning department was given a charge to kind of resolve some of those things. Allison and Monica are going to give us an update on how that work is progressing. And I guess there's conclusions that have almost been made or something like that. And I will let you guys have at it.
Okay, thank you. You can go to the next slide, Monica. I'm just going to intro this and then I'm going to turn it over to, oh, it's my computer.
No, here, I might need the mouse.
And then I'll turn it over to Monica. So anyway, so we're here. So the presentation that we gave to TPD on Monday was because of a specific referral from City Council. So we were at a zoning meeting and this really predicated from a rezoning case where there was a suggestion that we would like for you to approve this rezoning request for townhomes. And if you don't, then there is a buy right option of triplexes that would be for rent. And so I think that got City Council concerned and they wanted us to take a look at these large developments to see if there were some changes that needed to be made.
If you want to come over here,
Is there?
No,
I was gonna say.
So it might be helpful to go to the.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll just do that. We were gonna not go to the podium, but you know. That's good. We can.
Well, we're trying to make it more conversational.
Yeah.
So we do have a specific referral that we have to respond to City Council. But at the same time, we are also meeting as a department. So we sit down with our long range team, our UDO team, and our permitting team. And we've been looking at stuff that's coming in. And so the idea are the site plans that we're seeing, are they implementing the vision that was outlined in the comprehensive plan? If not, where are changes needed to be made? And so you've seen some text amendments come through, and that's really, in the spirit of making some of those changes, or like with the missing middle housing, they're new. And so we've had some people exploring some creative ways to get around some of the standards that are in there. So we're here for a couple reasons. I think it worked out really well to have Rebecca and Justin presenting beforehand, because the whole purpose of the duplex and triplex conversation and bringing that forward in the comprehensive plan and then in the UDO, because it's about housing. It's about housing needs. It's about housing options. It's about housing affordability. And so we're trying to increase those options in our community while also trying to manage for change that might be too rapid in communities because of growth. And that's not specific to duplexes or triplexes. It's just a function of growth. So we're looking at a couple different things. And so what we're going to talk to you about today is really mostly around some of the things that we've been considering as part of the referral. And some of it, that again, of course, is because we've been asked to, but it's also some of the things that we as staff and planners are wanting to evaluate to make sure that we're really implementing and achieving the goals as outlined in the comprehensive plan. So I'll kind of jump to the punchline, that what we said on Monday at TPD is that we want to bring this to the UDO Advisory Committee for more discussion. This is a group that we've convened that has lots of different perspectives. They span all council districts. We've got folks from sustainability, from the development industry, from all the different council districts. I think I mentioned that already, sorry. And with the idea is that when we have conversations, we want to take a deeper dive and get sort of a sense of where the community might fall on some conversations and engage that group. So that's where we're headed, and we're going to go there on Thursday. But we wanted to bring sort of the conversation and some of the things that we're thinking about to you all so that you can understand where we're headed and give us some feedback. So with that, I'll turn it over to Monica.
So again, we wanted this to be a little conversational, so I'm going to stand up here for the microphone's sake, but hopefully we can chat along the way. So again, Allison just mentioned this where we're starting, but we're starting when it comes back up with the comprehensive plan and goal 2, which is really around the diversity of housing options by increasing, again, as we were just talking about, that missing middle density housing. So duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, quads, people use different language, townhouses, ADUs, which you just heard those discussed fairly thoroughly, and trying to give that flexibility that historically is the pattern even within single family neighborhoods. And we see that in a lot of our existing older neighborhoods. So if diagrammatically what that looks like is this range here. So as we are probably well aware, if you drive around Charlotte, what you see is the dumbbell of these. So you see a lot of detached single family houses, and you see a lot of mid-rise apartments. What you don't see are those missing middle. That's why it's called the missing middle, right? Because you don't see a lot of development that is in that form. And you guys are really well versed in this. You spent years debating it as part of the comprehensive plan and kind of championing that conversation. So, but it is a good reminder for how we got here and how we kind of move the conversation forward today. So the goal is to get this mixture of housing units, housing types, to give all people options. So people who might not want to live in a single family house, people who might not financially be able to yet afford a single family house. Melissa, I thought I was talking about the townhouses and kind of the affordability options that those give people who might not be ready or able to make that leap. So in May of 2023, City Council made a referral, again, as Allison was describing, off that rezoning case, to look at alternate options, a schedule, how we might dive deeper into these UDO changes that were on larger projects. So you have a larger neighborhood 1 zoning district. People might come in, and instead of what you would historically see as being, let's say it was in R3, that means 3 houses per acre, they could then come in and do duplexes and triplexes on that. So it's not exactly a multiplier, but you can get where this is going, that what used to be 3 houses might now be 9 houses per acre, or 9 triplex units, right, per acre. And so they wanted us to dive a little deeper into what that looks like on the larger lot scale. So we have spent a lot of time listening, trying to understand, a lot of time researching. We're still ongoing doing research. I think we're pretty much in a pattern where we're constantly kind of digging into what's coming out about this. So we want to listen, research, then have a dialogue with, again, all of the people who are invested in the Charlotte Future 2040 plan, all of the people who are currently in neighborhoods that might see things coming out of the ground or see these rezoning cases and want to have conversations about what it means in their community. Then you have the development community that is really, excited about the tool, right? And people who are trying to close a gap of over 75,000 affordable housing units within the city. That's about what our gap is. So a lot of different things in play. So we want to have that dialogue. And then we are looking to make recommendations and really build consensus around those recommendations. And they'll go into buckets, right? So some short-term recommendations, some medium and long-term, and then get it adopted, and let's keep moving, right? So what we have been hearing is, and you'll see here when it comes back up, the bullet list of all the different things that people have said, right? So everything from, there's bigger buildings next to our house. We don't like that. They look huge. Why is this house so big? Why is this triplex so big? Do we want complete neighborhoods of only duplexes and triplexes? So, if you drive by a 15-acre new development and you live in a single family house, are we excited? Are we not excited about all of that being duplexes or all of that being triplexes? Was that the intention of the 2040 plan? Again, talked a lot about today, the affordability goals. So what are we trying to accomplish with affordability? How do we do that? How do we increase home ownership? I think that we can all agree that that's a great way to build wealth over time. So again, a lot of different issues, and part of us listening is trying to understand how we put those into buckets, those issues into buckets, and then how we prioritize what fits within the comp plan. So some of the research we've been doing, and this is really interesting, and you can dive deep into this, is if you look over time, what is happening with and what is getting built in our city is you see more. 2023 was a huge year for apartments in Charlotte. All of those are getting ready to come online right now. And you also see this flip, right, over time of more townhouses getting built than single family houses. The reason for that is there's a lot of reasons, but one of the big one being that land is expensive, home prices are expensive, and there's a huge need for that townhouse market, right? That's what people can afford. And that's what, when you pay a lot for land, that's what people can build on that land and then be able to sell. So again, we're trying to work within that middle area, that townhouse, duplex, quad. What you don't see a lot being built of is the duplex, quadruplex, triplex range. And again, that comes down to the building type that it is, the cost to construct it, the market for it. And so we're really trying to fill in that gap here with these changes. I will just make a note here that you'll see 2023 is pretty low in that duplex to quadruplex. Overall, it's low. So what you have happening is you might have one big development with a lot of duplexes going through. And so that number for, let's take, 2020, for example, that number looks high, but that could be half of that could be one development, right? So, and if it comes online, then it's going to make that number look a little higher. But overall, you'll note that those are lower, way lower numbers than the rest.
So let me just ask you a question about that. So you're saying that the duplex, quadplex numbers are just the number, the duplex, quadplex numbers across the trend line are per project. So it's 72 projects, not 72
No,
units.
those are units.
Okay, thank you.
Those are units.
So this is one of the things that constantly trips me up when we have rezonings, because developers are calling townhouse communities sets of quads and triplexes, when to me, that is a development of single family attached
Right.
townhouses.
Right. And honestly, they're becoming interchangeable because it depends on, there's a lot of nuance within that. If it's on a sublot, not on a sublot. But for all intents and purposes, in the direction that the building code has gone, is that if you do 3 townhouses in a row,
It's
that
a
means there's
triplex.
2 walls. That's a triplex.
But if
That's
we-
the same.
But we
But if
have,
we go back to the diagram of missing middle.
Right. That does
it's-
not look the same.
Exactly.
Right.
and we have this discussion because one is like in one and the other one's in two. And I have given up on it, but we do have this discussion about it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but that is part, that's part of the tug that we are seeing, because when it is coming out of the ground, it will look like townhouses, but there will be 2 of them squished together, 3 of them put together, duplex, triplex.
Commissioner Lansdale has a question.
I think there's one down there as well.
Okay.
I'm not sure who had it up first, but
I just want to have one little follow-up about that difference, because when you think of it from an accessibility standpoint, a stacked quad is 1,000 times more accessible than a 3-4-story townhouse. We're not building enough things for seniors that can't go up and down stairs. When we ended up buying a single family house in Charlotte, which was the last thing in the world we wanted to do, because we wanted my parents to be able to stay in a room and not have to go 4 floors up. So like, to me, there is a very, very fundamental difference between a traditional quad and triplex and duplex versus a townhouse for accessibility purposes. So that's all I really wanted to say.
Commissioner Lansdale.
my goodness, sorry, I didn't mean to change the order, Mr. Chairman, but yeah, I appreciate that with when we worked on the Mecklenburg County Livability Plan, that aging in place house was a major part of that work. But this is for you, Monica, as a comment. You don't need to have any other deck to talk about this. So you think you could carry this slide around and have all the conversations you want. Yeah, thank you.
You mean we can just talk for the rest of the hour on this one slide? Yeah, lots of things to say. Yeah, well, get ready because you're gonna have another slide. There's another slide that has a lot of things to say too. Okay, so when you're comparing this is the next slide. So when you're comparing, and again, these two slides are work coming from some of the consultant work that we've been doing. So it's very early work. We're working to finalize this and we'll have more information. But you'll also see how affordability compares between different housing types. And what I really want to point out here is that over time, what you're seeing is that the 2 to 4 unit buildings are holding their affordability and the rents are increasing. The cost is increasing at a slower rate than what you see in like single family, large multifamily, and even that 15 to 19. And what's interesting is that we can't get into like all the whys. We didn't do a research project on why is it this way, but you can draw some conclusions, which is that the amenities and amenitized environment of both single family and multifamily. So think, South End, NoDa, brand new apartment, and the cost of that, you're carrying it with the rents, right? Whereas what you were describing, Clayton, with a 2 to 4 unit stacked kind of flat on, Pecan Avenue in Plaza Midwood, that's not amenitized. It's holding the same over time. So you're seeing a less rent growth, which for a renter buyer is a very different situation.
Commissioner Russell.
Yes, so I think that this chart accurately depicts what I've been talking about from the 2 to 4 unit development part of it. So if we look at the UDO, you have an affordability requirement on quadplexes. So if you do a quadplex, one of them has to be affordable. But what you see about this chart is 2 to 4 unit products are affordable by nature and that the rents are holding steady. So you've added a requirement to get affordability on a product that's already affordable. And by nature, you're pushing development out of it toward 15 to 19 units, which we see have tripled over that same time frame. So that's what I'm talking about when we're talking about the duplexes and the quadplexes. There's a tremendous misunderstanding about the product and how it works and what it does. And I think that slide and the slide before accurately illustrates that we need to be pushing to get to smaller scale development because that's going to bring down the price points and the rent points a lot faster than the larger scale block developments, which you can see are through the roof.
Commissioner Seeley.
I just noticed that it says source census ACS 2021 5-year microdata. Did we look into anything else is there any nearer term data? Because I'm thinking about what my house was worth in 2021 versus what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone up $300,000 for no reason. So
yeah, we're asking now to
'cause you
kind
were
of
there.
go back in because I think the census data from 2023 just became available, in the last month and a half. So we can ask our consultant team to refresh these numbers. Literally, we got this information about 4 weeks ago at most, just in draft form. And so we've been kind of going through it. We think this is really interesting though, and helps to tell that story. And so we wanted to share it, but we will kind of get it as recent.
Yeah,
Because in Charlotte, and then you look at the numbers of multifamily units that have come online, you see that 2023 number. Obviously, that in comparison to this will be interesting too, right?
yeah, it will.
So again, just to remind you of the goals that are in the 2040 plan around this is that we want to first focus on those complete neighborhoods. So having neighborhoods that have that mix of uses, and that have context sensitive development within them. Again, that goal too, which I started off with, is that we have in the larger developments, and it says this in the policy, that we have a mix of unit types, right? So we are getting that single family, duplex, triplex, quad. Then we have within the retained neighborhood character and charm that we encourage infill small scale development that really fits into community and that fits into the character of existing neighborhoods. And so then the last one is that we really continue to develop and evaluate our regulations as we see things happening. So all of these things, we really want to tell the story that there's some push and pull in here, right? So we're going to learn along the way. We're going to tweak and make refinements to make sure that we are, number one, working under this overarching policy and that we are working towards that framework in the 2040 plan. So we want our tools in our UDO to get us towards this goal. So when we see things that might be a little out of whack, you're going to see them come in front of y'all as potential tweaks. And so under the implementation strategy, again, I just want to reiterate that, and I think you brought this up, Douglas, that under that neighborhood 1, the goal is to provide neighborhoods with a variety of housing types where single family is still the predominant. So I think we see that there could be some work to happen within this, if we are seeing 20-acre developments that are all one kind of product type, one type of development, how can we really assess that? So, and then you see this other one, which we're currently working on, is the overlay zoning, so that some of those infill sites, let's look at the character overlay of how you get back to that stacked form and back to the form that is representative of what was originally in there. So we are going to be working with the Ordinance Advisory Committee for just to go over a couple of these considerations, and I'll boil them down to I can tell you this, and while it's coming up, you can remember this. So it really gets to 3 things. Number 1 is the quantity, which focuses on the mix of development types over 5 acres. So how many, what is the mix of them? So that's quantity. Number 2 is the quality. So do we want to consider modifying development standards so that we get better and higher quality? So that's maybe potentially increasing open space, looking at what the buffers are between development, and other standards that might impact walkability and livability, like driveway standards or how we're connected to each other. And then the last is, so it's quantity, quality, and then the last is location. So do we want to look at where it is appropriate or not appropriate based on growth and where we want growth to have these types of developments, right? So just to go through those quickly and some of the things that we're considering. So when we first talk about how we get a mix of unit types, this is an existing development and just helps to kind of tell the story. It's over 5 acres in size. It's located in Villa Heights, right across from Plaza Midwood. Behind, this is the Summit, if you're aware, Summit Coffee on the plaza right here. So if you are aware of it, that is where that is. Yes, and so it is a great example of a new infill development over 5 acres that has a mix of housing types. So it has townhouses, or what you might call triplexes and quads. Again, remember they're using a similar type, right, in that center block. And then you have duplexes and some single family. Now, what to note here, and just to be aware of, is that if we are looking at a mix of unit types over a certain acreage, it is likely that what you're going to get is this type of kind of what I would call pod type development, because that is the way developers build projects, right? They're going to do a whole block of triplexes or quads, and then they're going to do a whole block of duplexes. So that's something that we're currently looking at to understand that if we were to move in that direction, this is the type of form that you will see. You're not going to see one duplex, one quad, one single family, and then repeat that over and over, because most of the time you're working with larger builders and they're going to do it in this frame. So are we okay with that? Are we not okay with that? Something we're thinking about. The second is that quality bucket and the development standards. Are there modifications we want to think about that help us, again, get to the goals of the comprehensive plan and look at how neighborhoods abut each other? What are the development standards around them? So those could be, you can see here on the left, this is just a plan literally that has come in through kind of what we call sketch plan development. It's not permitted yet, but it's kind of a typology we're starting to see. You can see here the existing development on the left side. This is the proposed subdivision on the right. It's all triplexes with some duplexes mixed in. You can see here how the side of the duplexes are right adjacent to the backyards of that new development right there. Do we think that's appropriate? Do we not think that's appropriate? Is there enough open space here? So some of the things that we want to consider as we're starting to see some of these site plans come in is how we might kind of further tweak this so that there is a compatibility between development types. And then the last thing I'll mention, which was picking up during our discussion last week, is this location question of, are there certain locations that are more appropriate for growth, for more triplexes, quads, and townhouses than others? And so you'll see here that all of the purple are the center place types, right? So everything in purple is where we either have a neighborhood center, a community activity center, or a regional center. And then everything in red are those larger in one neighborhood one parcels that we've been talking about. So what you can see here is that we might want to start considering being proximate and close to that center as having the ability to have more density, more triplexes, quads, and townhouses, versus the further away you are, maybe there's less of a mix. So just real quick, and then you can go. So one thing to consider here too is that this some of this too has to do with, so the gray, I don't know if you can tell the difference between like the light gray and the darker gray. The darker gray is what we call the ETJ. And so some of those areas too, it's like, do we want to talk and have a conversation about the ETJ and how appropriate, a 10-acre development with all triplexes is in the ETJ when we do not control necessarily the ability to take over all the streets. And, there's kind of several layers of service to that. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, you more or less ran into my question. It was like, when I look at this, I see mostly the reddish, not close to the purple. And the big globs that drew my eyes were in ETJ, which if I'm a developer, I'm going to say, where can I find the cheapest land? Which is going to, what regulatory vehicle does planning have to override where's the cheapest land? All right, and that ultimately that is the question. And I'm an insane market guy, so I'm gonna go with market says cheap land better than regulatory tool. But I don't know. That's I just raised this as a question, so I don't have the answer, but yeah.
Well, I'll add in really quick. One of the things that I kind of commented on at TPD was talking about locational criteria, but then getting to your comment about townhomes. So, we don't have a lot of allocation in one for townhomes. And so is there a scenario where we start talking about, well, you are proximate, maybe we start looking at 2 acres or more, you are proximate to centers. Should we start to think about maybe turning that up a little bit? So
you will get no argument.
Yeah.
You will get no argument from me about that. I do believe that we ought to push townhome development or whatever, 4 of them, into a place much closer than the purple, because I suspect, and just having had some conversations in the last month, some people are going to poop a brick if we put 4 of them out in the orange parts of the world.
But that then, that turns into the quad.
Yeah, the quad discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, I just had a reaction to that one. Sorry. Yeah.
So this is a great map because it tracks along some theory that I had of land use, and that we see that Charlotte is really a city of nodes. You look at Uptown, you can see South Park is on there. You can see Ballantyne, or all those like nice purple areas that we're getting a lot of dense development. But what I think is missing here, and I think it would help with your typology and understanding where things would grow from a market perspective, is if you look at, well, how does transportation connect all of those places? So if we are actively developing transportation networks to connect, and I'm just throwing some random out here, if I had an actual transportation plan that connected Ballantyne to South Park directly, then that would tell me where my growth is going to be and what's going to be the densest, right? as a practice. If you take that map and then you then go to the public, well, even city council and to the public and say, I've got 2 dense nodes and I want to spend all of my transportation resources connecting South Park to Ballantyne, a result of that is going to mean you're going to have a lot of dense development along that transportation node. I think then the light bulb would go off for not only city council, but for residents of Charlotte, because now they know I'm going to get a lot of people in this connection here, period. If I live on that connection, I've got a business decision to make in the next 10 to 20 years. If I don't, great. I know where the people are going. Because right now, I don't think anybody really understands where stuff is happening until they see the big blue Z, and then they freak out. And I think this is a way to kind of help turn that temperature down, because we're saying, look, we've got these specific nodes where we're cramming people into it, and we're going to build transportation specifically to these nodes. And then that's going to bring development of this nature. And that will save you from having to overhaul the whole UDO. You're now just kind of looking at the connections between the pieces as opposed to trying to redo the whole block.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point, and one that we are staying on top of. One is that we are looking at connectivity and transportation infrastructures, high priority transit networks as a potential overlay to this for just what you're saying. Is that where we might potentially think about turning things up? You know, that helps to kind of weed out where those things get turned up, turned down, because you know that those are potential new investment areas. In parallel to this conversation, if you guys have been tuning in, is that there's a conversation going on about strategic investment areas around transportation. Right now, there's currently proposed to be 22 of them, 16 plus the 6 corridors of opportunity, so 22 in total. And those are basically nodes of where projects would potentially be bundled if funding is available to do kind of next level, next gen transportation projects. So we're working closely to look at where these centers fall within those strategic investment areas to do just that. Because if all those things come true, then yes, theoretically, best planning practices, that's where you want your density. That's where you can connect people to jobs. That's where you can connect them to daily needs. So you want to put those things together. So all these conversations are kind of coming together this spring over what we've already adopted in the comp plan, where the future transportation investment areas are, and then this conversation around density and where we want targeted growth areas, centers, transportation. They're all in that framework, right?
Yeah, I would caution you on making it, and maybe this is just the language here, but saying that the transportation is an overlay. I think it should be the opposite. I think the transportation needs to be the basis, and the planning needs to follow on the transportation network. Because if we overlay transportation on top of the land use, then we're still kind of chasing the animal around the room instead of leading it around the room.
No, I think we're saying the same thing. I mean, they're working very closely together.
Okay.
So,
And I would just add too, so when the manager's office and CDOT are looking at these strategic investment areas, they're looking at kind of where the comp plan and the policy map have identified areas that we want to prioritize growth. And so there's a lot of focus on our centers. And so I think they're looking at our direction and then identifying investment areas based on that.
Got a couple of questions. Commissioner Shaw first, and then Commissioner Lansdale.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I have a question. I kind of have a comment. The chart with regard to the 2 to 4 units and then kind of going up from there makes my brain hurt a little bit. And I'm trying to identify exactly why, but I think the main reason is, I think that was a Charlotte-based data chart. Is that right? And Charlotte, if I understand the housing community or the housing stock well enough, we're a super duper young city compared to probably the nation, the national trends. And it's hard for me to believe that if I had, an acre of land and I'm able to put 75, 3-story walk-up garden style units with no kind of common corridor conditioning on that land, or I put, 2 or 3 really small townhomes, that that the aging of those townhomes is gonna be more affordable. I don't know if maybe the investor, the types of investors that buy them maybe drive that too. But I think it would be interesting as y'all continue to explore this to look at how that housing stock has aged in other cities and become affordable, because obviously and maybe, New York's probably the wrong example, but I don't know if it's Baltimore or Richmond or, the Arlington, Virginia, but something where it's a little bit more comparable, but they have a lot of aging stock just to kind of, it may not obviously drive. I know you're probably not going to take N1 and, allow those denser units, but if decisions are being made on charts, that type of a chart, maybe just to look at where those trends and affordability trends have gone in other cities.
Yeah, we have a lot of good trend information on some of those cities, but mostly peer cities, Minneapolis, Nashville. I believe we have Austin in our research too. And anyways, it is fairly similar. We're not really a unicorn in like those rents or anything, but we can bring more information to you all about kind of a wider range of data around how we're charting with other cities and what that looks like. I mean, the trend around the country is that housing stock is just lower in quantity too. So it's very kind of up and coming as to what information is available, because you're looking at a smaller sample size. I mean, across the country, basically.
Sure. Well, and I'm interested just in looking at it is when they're saying 2 to 4 units, is that like you showed the example in Villa Heights is that type of stock being taken into consideration, or is it more literally, Douglas moves in an old folks home and he turns his house into 2 units and then he's just able to pay his rent based on, so his.
I shaved today so that I would not look like an old man.
I think Douglas, I think you announced that I was on maternity leave or something in one of the sessions, so I had to get you back. I had to get you back by moving you.
Someone please take the knife out of my back.
So, but my point being that.
You should probably not miss another meeting. I'm just saying.
Douglas as an investor is going to have he's just going to be wanting to cover maybe the cost of his new residence, or he's not going to be looking for some crazy return threshold. And I say that only to say, I'm curious if you take the Villa Heights example, are those counted? Where are those counted? Because obviously as a master plan, it's a much larger, but if someone just buys 2 units, they may just be really happy to just cover their costs and just hold it as, an investment for their retirement fund or for their kids' college fund or something. So it's a different investment parameter.
Yeah, we can find out kind of how they're splicing that.
Yeah.
Anyways,
that would be interesting at some point.
Commissioner Lansdale, do you have a quick question?
I'll make it quick, yes. But on that one particular slide, if you were a savvy elected official, you would want maybe to ask a question about what would be the cost of the capital improvements based upon that ratio, to sort of see just how much investments are going to take in water and infrastructure to manage that one slide that we referenced. Yeah. And on slide 12, 14, and 15 in particular, my reaction was heartfelt as well when I was looking at it, because we also need to align this with our streets design guidelines manual. Because if we're doing this by the categories we're supposed to be doing it, it should be clear about what streets are required in those types of developments. So we're not having to negotiate and fight and have conflict every single petition moving forward. The last thing is a larger question, not for today, but I really don't understand how we got slotted down for the OAC to review these potential things first, when the decision-making process on the zoning doesn't land there. It lands here. And I want to make sure that we're included in the process. So when we don't get the OAC, we get the OAC recommendation, it's already cemented and water's been added to the cement and it's curing, it feels like, by the time we get it. But I want to make sure we have a comment on that. Thanks.
No, I'll respond to that. So, the UAC is really just intended to be an initial feedback, sort of hey, this is kind of what we're thinking. And it's just the representation across the city, I think it represents the people of Charlotte too, and the different interests. And so that is definitely not saying that you all will not be involved in having a lot of complicated conversations, but it's just a testing ground for us because ultimately, you know, there is a recommendation that comes from this body to city council. It doesn't come from TPD. It comes from this body. And so, you know, I promise you will have your time.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
And that is something for us to remember, that we are the people who are responsible for recommendations on long-term land use planning issues. And just to also, and you guys might have put this in there. Oh, wait, is it UAC? There are 2 meetings that came that I got a notice for. I don't know if that went to the rest of folks. But please, if you've got some time, because I mean, I suspect that if you were willing to, we could sit here and talk about this all day, but we are getting close to our time. But if you can participate in one of those meetings that are happening later in this month, and we'll make sure everybody knows when those are going down, do. So Monica, back to you.
Yeah, I was just gonna wrap up by basically saying these are the 3 things which I reviewed earlier that we are taking to that UAC body on Thursday. So Thursday will be the first time that we will have discussed it with them broadly. So you are hearing it slightly ahead of that. We are on a fast timeline, so we will have 2 UAC meetings in the month of February. So there's one this Thursday and then there's one on the 22nd. So please stay tuned into that. Obviously, we are committed to going back to council just to give them an update at TPD in March. There's not expected to be action necessarily taken. It's really an update of those conversations. We're happy to come also and discuss that here in March because this is all leading towards any potential changes to really be handled in the April-May timeframe with text amendment, potential approach text amendment, and those next steps. So we are trying to get out ahead and move quickly, but we also want to go through the process, listen to people kind of, and make and adapt our approach along the way based on those things. So we are, again, happy to come back and kind of give an update as part of that March meeting. I know I called Douglas last week and said, this is really important and y'all would really care about it. And from the conversation today, I think we can agree that that is very much the case.
Yeah, I will think that there are 14 people on this commission who have an opinion about just about everything and are not shy about letting you know. Yeah, thanks very much, Monica. In the interest of time, because we are pushing about 10 minutes till 2, does anybody have a burning question for Monica or Allison at this point in time? Yolanda L., can I count on you guys to make sure that everybody gets an invitation for the UAC meetings this Thursday and next Thursday? I think they're at 11:30.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not an in-person on that. We're all Zooming, right? Yeah, we're all Zooming. So you can do it wherever you are. It is important for us to have this discussion. And if you've got some ideas and feedback, that will be greatly appreciated by everybody. All right, now, so we've covered most of the stuff. Let's go around the table and see what folks are doing, and then we'll do homework. And we're going to begin with Commissioner Rhodes.
So just to note, the one USC meeting is already on the calendar for a hold for 11:30 to 1 p.m. on Thursday. Yeah. So, man, what was that, January? Are we in February now? Okay, so January. Most of my activities were centered around school activities with my kids. So PTA things, as well as Science Olympiad for my oldest daughter. They actually came in 3rd and in 2nd in their last 2 times that they were around. So had a lot of school involvement per se. And then last month for our Leadership Charlotte, it was diversity inclusion. So we had 8 hours of diversity inclusion training, which was really intense and great conversations that centered around that. And also I'm working on my community service project. So that was also centered around students, high school students, and doing some mentorship for there. So that's been my involvement in the community.
All right, Commissioner Stewart.
I've continued to work with constituents on 2022-121, the big development off Ray Road, listening to them. Hopefully I'm providing an umbrella of.
You are not
emails,
alone.
For the rest, it's actually been very interesting, and there's some really thoughtful people, thoughtful people on some of their objections. And I think the biggest objection is the transportation, the traffic. And I know it's something we always think about, and, Providence Road is Providence Road is Providence Road. It's not going to become a 4-lane with a light rail running down the side of it. And it's, it's a real dilemma as we think about the development. I know 10-minute neighborhoods and all of that, but the practical reality of this is, there's going to be more cars on the road.
Commissioner Harvey.
I've spent the last month, I guess 6 weeks, kind of focusing on another part of the anti-displacement, because if you can't tell, that changed from the land trust to rebuild it together. So now it's more focusing in aging in place and critical home repair and all that kind of stuff, and kind of meeting with folks in Hidden Valley, Life Project, also folks at the Legal Advocate Center. So, yeah.
Thanks, sir. Commissioner Shaw.
Other than coming back from my maternity leave, no meaningful update.
You look great, by the way.
That's great. Thank you.
Is that Rick's baby?
Wow.
He's not here, so we can say things about it. Commissioner Wilden.
So this is Transit Equity Month. So I've been participating in events locally and across the country. I attended the UDO information session. Was that last week? Last week. And then I did a tour with some neighbors for a property that we'll be voting on a zoning committee whenever it comes up. And then I've actually been doing quite a few of the American Planning Association webinar learnings. I just did a recent one on better zoning to create better communities, and it was hosted by the Illinois chapter, and it was really interesting.
Thank you. Those are, if you don't mind, send those to everybody, because I'm not sure everybody realizes those are out there and that they're a great resource. Thank you. Commissioner Seeley.
As the reigning champion, along with my team of the ULI Planet event, I wanted to mention that was fun, and my team crushed it. So y'all didn't even have a chance. Anyways, so I am regularly attending a couple of initiatives, one of which is trying to bring more safe pedestrian streets to the east end and the north end of, and also west end once we get more stakeholders. And attended an event on Central Avenue along with Commissioner Welton.
We were the good looking ones.
Yes, we were the good looking ones in the room. Attended the Center City Partners State of the Center City, and also contributed to it as a designer and as a consultant, but and some other things.
Commissioner Gasson.
And of course, crushed Planet.
The last 6 weeks, I guess, since we last met, I've been focusing a lot on community. So I have attended for the North End all of the community meetings in January for the 8 neighborhoods in my area. There's another one tonight, hosted a community-wide meeting as well, and been meeting with nonprofits who are working in the North End area, as well as attending the Nest Commission and all those beautiful meetings as well. Yep.
Thank you. Commissioner Russell.
All right. So I too have been down to the Ray Road rezoning, very interesting, some engaging and thoughtful people down there. And then I have been working with some in the private development community as well as the public on some issues that have come about in the UDO. So I'm actively pursuing some of those conversations, and hopefully we can get those somewhere to make some changes. Thank you.
Go back, I forgot something.
Go ahead.
And I just wanted to share this. And it was such a great event that I attended. And Lansdale, you'll probably appreciate this, but in the Druid Hills community, there's a pilot program going on for individuals who've purchased houses, and they get a free e-bike once they purchase houses. So I've, 6 have been given out so far, and now they are the e-bike gang. So it's very interesting. So I think that's a great pilot. program.
I love.
Melissa, you're gonna-
I love biker gangs.
Melissa, you're gonna need to come tell me the details, because
Okay.
that's, yeah. I mean, I know the details, but about the people in the e-bike.
Biker gangs are great. Commissioner Neely.
So I have been actively engaging as far as networking events across the city with some of the volunteer new programs. The new park, Bacall Park, had an opportunity to go to the VAPA Center for that event. Some other real estate engaging opportunities, as well as some political events in town halls.
Commissioner Lansdowne.
Yeah, the information about the bikes is out there. It was a great project. For me, working on these issues that are not really important to anybody else but me, it seems, but the transportation thing seems to be coming up for me. I went to a 4-hour Transportation 101 training for the CRTPO, participated in the Technical Coordinating Committee meeting for the CRTPO, the Bike Ped Work Group for the CRTPO, the Federal Railway Administration Long Distance Study Regional Group, and the city's TPD meeting as well. The one thing I will glean and take away is that when this group pays attention to infill and associated projects with future transit corridors, it's important that we don't hamstring the national effort, the state effort, to allow people to move through and allow economic and people movement in our state through these transportation corridors. So when a parcel comes up and wants to build right next to a road or a train track, make sure we understand the impact on the long range there is what I gleaned from my meetings this month. And I cannot thank staff enough for where we are right now and the levels of depth of knowledge. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. And my turn, and then we'll do our homework. Thank you for everyone who came out and worked with Urban Plan. Not only do we have almost all the commissioners there, we had city council and county commissioners who I do believe had a light bulb moment. I went to county commission last week to thank those folks for coming out. I also got the fun experience of having some long conversations regarding the railroad rezoning. So hopefully they're all straightened out now. I got to have some conversations with the folks down in Steel Creek, and these folks are in the ETJ. So that is why I have a reaction to that. Got to go up to North Lake Mall for rezoning consideration up there. I hung out with the hoodlums who were trying to get some transportation stuff done over on Central Avenue East Side. There's some transit issues over there that Commissioner Winokur is not here today. He's not pregnant again, but he is in federal court. So that was his excuse for not being here today.
Jury duty.
No, jury duty is not it. He is actually, I think he has to stand up because you remember, Rick is there when you allegedly commit murder. But Rick has been very vocal about getting some changes done in terms of transportation issues on his side of town. And Clayton and I were there along with former Commissioner Gussman and a whole bunch of folks from different east and north side neighborhoods. I won't mention them all because I'll forget somebody. You may have heard I did a podcast last month. It was the best podcast that ever was. It truly is. It truly was. I did the Rubik podcast, and so it was just. I was spectacular. That's all I've got to say. I do have a couple of speaking engagements that are kind of falling out of that. So, Commissioner Seeley, you have the last word, and then we're going to do our homework.
I did just remember, I sat down with a reporter from Axios last week to talk about the Planning Commission and to we're talking about how we can get more information out of the community about what we do. So I teed that off with Axios. I'm going to introduce them to you.
That would be great.
And then I do have also meetings with the neighborhood down on Kuykendall. On Providence Road. I will let you guys know what the details are on that, so more people can attend from this group.
Let me know, particularly because I have a friend who asked me about it. She lives down there. All right, everybody, we've got homework for next month. And our homework for next month is going to be teed up by Pam Murray. And for those of you who don't know, Pam Murray rides her bike all over this town. Pam, I'm going to ask you to come up to the table and take a seat so you can be at a microphone. Excuse me. But the homework is the book Paved Paradise by Henry Graybar. And if Pam will just give us a brief synopsis of the book, and that's your homework. And I also have a webpage there for those of you who cannot read. And that's a conversation that Mr. Graybar has with Clay Grubb here in town. So Pam, tell us about the book.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here. And first of all, thank you for all the work that all of y'all are doing. I'm so encouraged as a citizen, as a resident. I live in Plaza Midwood. I've been here since Hurricane Hugo. I think that's 1989 or 90 or something like that. But as Douglas said, I do ride my bike everywhere, and I invite all of y'all to ride bikes with me. I've only ridden bikes with a few of y'all. But the reason why I wanted to come here, and this dovetails nicely into everything that you've already done today and what you're working on. The elephant in the room that we don't see in any of these pictures, I thought it was comical because we have all these housing and everything else. The elephant is the parking. I mean, that's why, you know, the duplexes and the quads, the rates don't go up as much. It's because it's embedded in that Texas donut. And y'all all know about that. I mean, it costs a lot to build that parking deck, and it's embedded in that cost. So, you know, that's what Paved Paradise is all about. And I'm sure y'all probably know a lot of this and probably know all of it, but let's just go through it. I mean, parking is necessary. We're mobile people. You know, the problem is everybody assumes, and when I say parking, what do y'all all assume? Parking what? Cars. It shouldn't be assumed that we're parking a car. It should be assumed that we are parking other vehicles. You know, our parking minimums, what do those assume? Parking what? Cars. Yes, there's some minimums or some standards. They have to put a bike rack. They're supposed to be covered bike parking. A lot of people only put those there for the inspection and then it's gone. Some people take it out. You know, at the Walmart, they put inventory in there and they lock it up. At the ABC store, they do the same thing. You can't even use the thing. So, you know, I mean, we've removed some of those things. So let me go back. Okay, so, you know, we need to break free of this car dependency. And, you know, everybody, you know, you look at the surveys and everything, everybody wants to ride a bike. You read about it. We want to walk. We want to ride a bike. I mean, you talk about walkability, which is great, but people want to be able to ride. You know, the difference between me and you and a lot of other people is I've ridden to all of those places. You know, yes, I rode to the bike summit in Salisbury. I rode my bike there. Okay. I mean, I've ridden to Steel Creek. I've ridden to Ballantyne. You know, that's the difference. And what I'm saying is not to say, oh yeah, I can do that, but it's to say, if I can do it, you can do it, because it basically just takes time. And then everybody says, oh, I don't have the time. But you know, what I'm challenging all you to do is to put your health first. And I want you to get 1 or 2 hours of exercise every now and then. And if you do that, you can bike there. Okay, let me go back to the book. I'm getting off track. Okay, so we're stuck in this car dependent cycle of building more lanes, more parking spaces, and that is taking up our public space. We're giving away our public space for free. We have to get rid of that. We have to get rid of all free parking. Read the book, see what other cities have done. Read about Chicago, the whole parking meter debacle, right? They sold it to a private equity firm and then they figured out, oh, wait, we sold it too low. You know, most of our public space is parking. So those 2 and 4 units is because those people are parking on the street. Look at what happened with the development on Brevard, where they only built 1 space or no spaces, the Grove property. And now look at Brevard before and after. It's all full now, right? So this is why we need to charge for parking everywhere. Get rid of, I mean, you know, you remember Charlotte 20 years ago, we had a lot of surface parking lots. We've already lived that. Look at other cities. What are they doing? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So, you know, from the book, well, and I'll quote some things here. In Japan, you know, and we're not Japan, but, you know, just to kind of give you an idea, they have to prove that they have proof of parking prior to registering a vehicle. Okay. And there is no free parking there. All right. So, you know, we're giving away our public space. In that slide with the 2 and 4 and the barbell units and the missing middle, we didn't see any cars parked on that street. You know, what does Thomas Avenue look like? Everybody knows. There's parking on both sides of the street. Okay, look at the plaza. We put a bike lane down there, which is great, but the other option was parking. So we don't need this parking. We don't want to have all this parking. Who wants to live in a parking lot? Nobody wants to live in a parking lot. In London in 2004, they replaced the parking minimums with parking maximums. Why can't we do that? Okay, in Paris, where cars represent 11% of trips, they take up 50% of public space. So guess what they did just last week? They increased the parking fees on cars. They increased it by 50% because they take up too much space. So when we think of parking and parking minimums, well, first of all, we should get rid of parking minimums. We should get rid of free parking, right? We have to think of parking maximums. Those parking maximums should be parking for people to arrive how they want to arrive, whether that's by bike, by moped, by scooter, by motorcycle, by e-bike, right? By bus, by public transit. Why do we spend trillions of dollars on cars and we only spend billions of dollars on public transit? Why is that? We need to put more of our money where we want the world that we want to live in. We don't want to live in a parking lot. We want to live in a thriving city. A lot of people come here and I take people for bike rides all the time. I mean, y'all probably don't know that, but I invite all of y'all to do it. And I do have a bike library. So anybody wants to borrow a bike, come to my house. I'll take you for a ride wherever you want to go. Okay. So, when Doug says I ride my bike everywhere, yes, I ride my bike everywhere, to the doctor, to the dentist, to the hair salon, to vacation. I take the train. I have the 10-ride train pass. I take my bike on the plane. I take it on the train. Or I ride it there if I could have enough time. But what I'm saying is these things are possible and we need to show the possibility. Y'all need to know that there are people in Charlotte that want to live without a car, that don't want to be dependent on a car. I do have a car. I use the car insurance because I have the underinsured motorist in case I get hit on my bike. Okay,
Maximum level.
At the maximum level, the $1 million level that Ann Groninger told me to get. Because these people are driving, they don't have maximum insurance, okay? You have to protect yourself. Okay, so let's see, I'm probably getting off track. Let me see if
You're getting near the end of your time.
Yeah, I know, I'm at the end of my time. I did time it, and I did. Cars are killing us, and exercise is the most potent longevity drug. So that was from Outlive by Peter Attia. 2 more things I want to tell you. Okay, globally, 1.25 million people die in car crashes per year. That's 3,400 people a day. So why do we accept that? The leading cause of death between 15 and 29 years old is car fatalities. Why do we accept that? And we are a young city, right? So, okay, let me stop there and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pam. If you can't tell, Pam's a little bit passionate about bikes. I will tell you this story. Pam, I think it was probably about 6 years ago. I posted my odometer, first of the year, and I think it had 31,000 miles on it. And Pam posted her odometer, and I think it had 31,000 miles on it. So I haven't been riding as much, and mine is probably like 51 something now. Pam, do you have a clue as to what your odometer says?
Well, it's over 76,000.
Just saying, she's been riding a little bit more than me in the last few years. And that's an interesting way to see this city. Thanks, everybody. For our next meeting, I will just sum us up real quick. We'll have folks in from South Park Community Partners, University City Partners, those are 2 municipal service districts. We'll get information from them. The alignment rezoning, which is what's coming forward. Dave will be here to talk to us about that. Alicia will come and give us the latest draft of the community area, the 2040 policy map. Planning committee will have stormwater services in. There's the calendar for the next several days. Next meeting, I will try and get us out of here on time. Again, the UAC meeting on next Thursday. Please, if you can, be involved in that. If you've got ideas, feed them back to the ladies. And otherwise, I think that's it, people. And let's stick a fork in it. We are done. Thank you. Wait, I need a motion to adjourn.